time for another edition of The Flex. The absolute best fantasy football podcast in existence.
So I'll say this, not to say that I disagree, but...
I disagree.
Oh my God.
Presented by Broadway Sports.
All right, Flexers ready?
Welcome into The Flex, the most accurate fantasy show hosted by the Golden Tate anti-fan club, Beholden Hate. My name is Zach Lyons, and you can follow me on Twitter at FWordsPod. I am joined always by the grandson of the founding father of Beholden Hate himself, Robert Greenlaw. Follow him on Twitter at Rob on Broadway. And of course, we're both joined by Titans Twitter biggest meanie head, Justin Graver. Follow him on Twitter at Titans Film Room. Only if you want to be called stupid. We are all brought to you by the universal leader of sports that covers the Tennessee Titans, BroadwaySportsMedia.com. Go subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube to make sure you're alerted whenever the Broadway crew goes live. Speaking of live, December 23rd. That's right, Thursday Night Football. Broadway Sports will be live at Bold Patriot Brewing Company in West Nashville for the Thursday Night Football game. Come on out and hang with us as we watch the Titans decimate the 49ers. But tonight, we are going to talk about players that we think will end up in the top 12 at their position this week to help you get that playoff win. We will end the night with our world-renowned sit-start question and answer section, so please head on over to YouTube or Facebook to submit your questions and watch us there. Just to reiterate, make sure to share the live stream and also subscribe to notifications so you can catch all of our Broadway videos on YouTube and on Facebook. Justin, Greenlaw, this could be the last time that we're all three together for the fantasy season. So I want to hear, and I'm springing this up on you, so I'll start with Greenlaw first. What has been your favorite moment of this year's fantasy season? Doesn't have to be the show, but what is your favorite moment of the fantasy season?
To me?
I said Greenlaw first. And he is muted, I think. So, what a horrible...
Sorry about that.
Okay,
I was muted. I think that for the show, Graver telling me that he blends all of his food together for Thanksgiving was pretty funny because it's awful. I mean, this is a guy that's going out of his way to be mean to people on Twitter, and yet he blends his food together on Thanksgiving Day. Pretty absurd. I mean, what a two-faced type guy there. For the fantasy season, I think Deebo Samuel becoming a surprise only because I drafted him in a league of record that's a money league. So because of that, I'm thankful for that. I'm excited for that. That's probably been the most promising development that's coming out of the season because most of my other teams are trash because didn't go to plan.
Graver, what is your biggest surprise of the fantasy season?
My biggest surprise? That's a little bit different than what I was going to say, which was the thing I loved most.
Well, what's the thing you love most?
Cordero Patterson is the thing I've loved most this season. I was able to pick him up in almost every league. He was exactly what I was talking about early on. I know you guys like to make fun of me for saying whoever I said. I don't even remember.
Wayne Gallman, who you said would be pretty stacked one.
Nah. All I said was a backup Falcons running back. Like right now, that's Wayne Gallman, but it could be anyone, and it's likely going to be someone nobody's talking about right now, and that's exactly what it ended up being. It was Cordero Patterson. I claimed him as soon as I saw the role he was getting, and he's been a superstar. He carried me to the playoffs in every league, and I'm going to win.
I think mine is I'm going to roll with Cooper Kupp. I think that not only am I most thankful for him, but it's also, I think, the biggest surprise because you really wouldn't have expected Cooper Kupp to be the wide receiver one. And on top of all of that, he was pretty cheap. I mean, you probably got him in like the 5th or 6th round more than likely. I mean, maybe in some PPR leagues, fourth round, but I mean, he's a pretty cheap wide receiver to have, and he's probably carrying your fantasy team like he is carrying mine in one of my league of records, just because this last week was a horrendous week for fantasy football. So I feel sorry for many of you who probably needed Antonio Gibson to have big games, James Robinson to have big games. I'm just going through my fantasy team.
I had a great
right
week
now.
last week. I had a
I had
phenomenal
Terry
week.
McLaurin.
That's what
0.
happens when you get like
Ugh,
Taysom Hill on your team and
McLaurin.
George Kittle, those types of guys. They just carry you to
Yeah.
championships.
I mean, Terry McLaurin, 0. James Robinson barely got me anything. I mean, it was a disaster all the way through. Luckily, I'd already secured my playoff spot, so it really didn't matter. Let's get into, though, players that do matter. And Greenlaw, we'll start with you. Tell us about a quarterback that maybe people aren't looking at that should end, I guess, Monday. This week is it week 14 or week 15? Week 15 as QB1.
Yeah, so basically through the whole show, like you said, we're going through guys that maybe you wouldn't expect to be in the top 12, but we're all going to go and predict the guys that we think will end up in their top 12 or starting position for you. So my quarterback is Jimmy Garoppolo. Last 2 weeks he's been quarterback 13 and 12. So low end quarterback 1, but still quarterback 1. And this week he gets to go against Atlanta, who's been the second worst defense against quarterbacks. They haven't given up. Mello liked to share in our chat that they haven't given up an explosive play of over 40 yards this year, but it hasn't mattered because teams are carving them up with the shorter stuff. They don't have to get 50-yard plays to score on the Falcons. The Falcons are giving little resistance to any team. Garoppolo's got all of his weapons back. Maybe not Elijah Mitchell, but he'll have his pass catcher, and that's what that matters here. So I feel pretty confident. A team giving up 20 points per game against quarterbacks, he'll be able to put up, even if it's low end, quarterback 1 stats.
Yeah, it was between my choice at this quarterback position, Jimmy G, and I went with the other guy, but Jimmy G was almost right there, but I almost felt like the performances these last 2 weeks may have been a little too obvious, but I think you're right. It is Jimmy G, right? You can't really guarantee that he can't turn into the Jimmy G that we've seen that, throws 3 interceptions and barely moves the ball. But full complement of weapons. It seems like they're really hitting their stride. And you alluded to him earlier, but Deebo Samuel, wide receiver, he's a running back. I mean, he can do it all. And they are manufacturing touches that benefits fantasy players or fantasy owners that have both Deebo Samuel and Jimmy G. Justin,
Right. The beauty of the 49ers offense is that both those guys are catching short passes. Kittle and Samuel and even Ayuk are catching short passes and getting a lot of yards after the catch. That's kind of what makes that offense run. So they're not even asking a whole lot of Jimmy G, which is why you don't. One, if they did ask him to be more, they'd be in big trouble. But they're asking him to do very little, and the production's there because his weapons are so good.
The only thing you worry about is if Deebo Samuel returns and starts running in touchdowns that Jimmy G would have got as short passes.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a huge concern. I agree with.
I think if Elijah Mitchell comes back, then you don't have to worry about that as much.
Right.
Justin, who is a quarterback in your on your list that is probably going to be a quarterback 1 for week 15?
I don't know if this is too obvious of a choice, but my choice is Taysom Hill. And they're going up against the Buccaneers defense this week, prime time, Sunday Night Football. And it's not because Taysom Hill's good at playing football. He's really not at all. But the rushing volume, he could be the RB1. So add in a few passing points as well, possibly a touchdown. And you're looking at possibly the QB1, certainly a QB1. He's done it 2 weeks in a row now with very pedestrian passing stats. But the rushing total is over 70 yards. He had 2 rushing touchdowns last week. He had 2 passing touchdowns the week before. One of them was a really short pass to Deontay Harris, who just took a slant all the way to the house. Those are the kind of things that can happen. It'll happen even more with Alvin Kamara, who's been back now for a week and should play again. So I'm all in on Taysom Hill.
Since becoming the full-time starter, he's quarterback 3 in fantasy points, by the way.
Fun fact about Taysom Hill, he's never scored more than 2 touchdowns as the starting quarterback. He either has 2 rushing or 2 passing in each game.
Yeah,
Over the last 2 weeks, Taysom Hill ranks 4th in the NFL in rushing yards. He's a
as
quarterback.
wild. I bet that's more than Aaron Jones. I feel like. I know that's an over exaggeration, but yeah, Taysom Hill. Glad I went and picked him up last week because it's either him or Ryan Tannehill, and obviously Ryan Tannehill, is struggling fantasy points wise and probably real life wise. So Taysom Hill hopefully will be able to carry me throughout the playoffs. So I like this pick.
One more point on this. We're talking QB1 numbers. Josh Allen right now is the QB1, averaging 23.54 fantasy points per game. Taysom Hill in his 2 starts is averaging 23.48, 0.06 fantasy points below the QB1. It's only 2 games, small sample size, whatever. A bad game's probably coming at some point, and it could happen anytime. But I think you're okay taking the swing for the QB1 upside with the rushing floor as like a worst case scenario.
I am going out on a limb on this one, and maybe even these next 2, because I'm going with Jacksonville Jaguars players. And listen, we're not a Tennessee Titans podcast, we're a fantasy football podcast, but this stuff going down in Jacksonville is wild, and it may affect team production, right? At some point it could. But I'm going Trevor Lawrence right now, because right now in my mind, Trevor Lawrence is probably on your waivers, and he's going up against the Texans. And the Texans just allowed Russell Wilson to have a QB9 fantasy week. And on top of that, going up against Texans in week 1 was one of Trevor Lawrence's best games of the season. And on top of that, nobody's expecting Trevor Lawrence to do anything, because for the last 2 weeks, he is quarterback 32. Is the 32nd ranked quarterback in fantasy points scored. I think the Texans, they are such a good matchup for this team. And I truly believe that the Houston Texans, who rank 13th against the fantasy quarterbacks, are going to allow Trevor Lawrence to rebound. Somehow, some way, this kind of feels like one of those games where the Jaguars are just going to destroy the Texans because nobody believes in the Jaguars. And that is an NFL theme, right? When everybody is down on an NFL team, they just come in and destroy an even shittier team than they are. I think the Jaguars defense is going to be able to turn the ball over with Davis Mills at quarterback, allowing Trevor Lawrence more opportunity. And on top of that, I think this will also play into my next thing, which I think that James Robinson is going to have a bounce back week after 2 weeks of being really, really shitty. And I think, again, you go back and look at what the Seattle Seahawks did against Jacksonville or against Houston. Elijah Penny, or wait a minute, is Elijah Penny? Rashad Penny. I can't even remember his name because this guy went wild for no reason. And it just was insane. And James Robinson is an infinitely better running back than Rashad Penny. So I am doubling down on 2 Jacksonville Jaguars, which will probably end up biting me in the ass. And that is Trevor Lawrence and James Robinson. Greenlaw, your thoughts?
I don't hate either pick, honestly. I'm very pro James Robinson, even with the the issues they've had getting him on the field. And Trevor Lawrence, like you said, he had a great game. Not great, but he had 300 yards of passing and 3 touchdowns. He did throw 3 interceptions, but his best statistical game yardage and touchdowns wise. And he hasn't had a touch. I think he's had 1 touchdown in the last 6 weeks. So good get right game for him.
He also has the 3rd easiest strength of schedule for weeks 15 through 17, according to Fantasy Pros website. So he's not only good this week, he has the 2nd easiest matchup, or I think 2nd or 3rd easiest matchup this week. 3rd easiest matchup this week against Houston, and then 3rd overall? Yeah, 3rd overall easiest strength of schedule for the fantasy playoffs. So I think that's a good player to have.
We do have a user or listener, watcher, whatever you want to call them, who's about to go on lunch breaks.
Viewer.
So let's get to his questions. So MJ Jr. 23 says, start 2. Eckler, Monty, Fournette, and James Conner. I have Mark Andrews and Gronk at tight end. Can flex 1 Do I flex a tight end or a running back? And then he's going up against the number 2 guy. I also have Renfro, Lockett, Jalen Waddle, Brendan Ayuk, and T. Higgins. So you got to pick 2 wide receivers. So got to pick 2 out of this group. And I'm going Fournette and David Montgomery is where I'm going to go. And I don't think you started tied in. It's a really good group of running backs. I don't think you can really go wrong, but I think you should start 2 running backs regardless. I don't think you should mess with the tight ends because you don't know who's the quarterback going to be for the Ravens. And I think Fournette gets more points than Gronk at this point.
Well, I would say Eckler and Connor are both dealing with, I think, mild ankle issues. They're both day to day, so just keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
But if one of these 4 running,
why'd you go what when I said it, Monty and Fournette?
Well, I think Eckler's a must start if he's healthy. I think Connor is a touchdown machine, and also therefore, if you can flex, I mean, I'm not benching Fournette either. Fournette is carrying teams to championships this year, mine included. If you can flex one of these 4 running backs, like if his question is, do I flex a tight end or a running back, and one of these 4 running backs is the flex option, and you start 2 at the 2 RB positions, then I would flex Connor, start Fournette, and then if Eckler's healthy, he's who I would start. And if Montgomery, if he's not, then I would play Montgomery.
See, I think I would put Montgomery, Fournette, and Connor in that situation. I think I would sit Eckler with his ankle sprain and them going up against the Chiefs.
Chiefs defense has been really good.
Yeah.
I think I would start Monty, Fournette, and Connor as well. And then I'm sitting Andrews if Lamar can't go, even though he was really productive with Huntley this week. But I think I'm going with the sure thing in Gronk, who's been a consistent tight end 1 every single week with Brady. And then I'm keeping those 3 running backs because Montgomery's gotten a ton of run in Chicago. When he's been healthy, he's taking like 90% of the snaps. That's who I would take, especially against a bad Vikings defense. Fournette has been a machine, and Connor, like you guys have said, been awesome ever since who's the backup there? Edmonds has gone out. So I think that's your 4.
Okay, so we got to pick 2 wide receivers: Renfro, Lockett, Jalen Waddle, Brandon Ayuk, and T. Higgins. I'm definitely starting Hunter Renfro just because the Browns may not have anybody to field. I mean, like their defense could be totally decimated at the time it rolls around.
Hunter Renfro is the only receiver with 19 or more fantasy points in each of his last 3 games.
Yeah, I think I would go Renfro and Brandon Ayuk. I just have a feeling
T. Higgins.
Ayuk
Yeah,
this game. I like T.
I don't
Higgins.
think you can
It's
sit
down to
Higgins.
him
I
too.
don't think you can sit Higgins at all. I think he's a wide receiver 1 every week at this point, and I don't think you can bench Renfro either with I think you got to start those 2. Waddle is the only one that I'm kind of iffy on because he's gotten a ton of targets recently. So those are my top
flex
3, but I think I'm going Higgins and Renfro here.
The Bengals do play the Broncos, and that's kind of why I went Brandon Ayuk over T. Higgins. But I don't think you can go wrong either way there.
There are 3 receivers who have had 100 receiving yards in 3 straight games. T. Higgins and Hunter Renfro are 2 of the 3. Devontae Adams is the other one.
All right.
All very similar athletes too.
Jalen Waddle does play the Jets, but it's just you never know which team the Jets you're going to get and who on this offense get it.
The Jets are really, really, really bad against the run more than anything, and I think that leads us right to Greenlaw's running back.
Yeah. So my running back this week is Miles Gaskin. But it's the thing with Gaskin is he doesn't get a whole lot of production on the ground. He gets most of it through receptions. And the Jets have been really bad against running backs, period. They give up the most points in the NFL. But he's been a RB1 3 of the last 5 weeks. I think he continues it here. Not even as a running back 2. I think he's a running back 1. He has been pretty touchdown dependent, but when they get into the red zone, he is a frequent target of theirs. So I like Gaskin in this matchup. Really, any running back you have against the Jets is a solid start, and I think he's a good pick here.
The only thing is him and all the other running backs in Miami all got placed on the COVID list on Tuesday. So
That's true.
I think
So
Malcolm Brown is the only one that's not on the COVID list.
Malcolm Brown and
to
Duke
pivot-
Johnson.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Check on Malcolm Brown because he has not actually been activated yet. He's in his designated to return window, kind of like Bud Dupree is, kind of like Julio Jones was last week leading up to the week. He was activated on Saturday, I think. So Malcolm Brown could be like activated on Saturday. He was at practice on Wednesday. I'm picking up Malcolm Brown everywhere. It's the best matchup of the week. And if he can play, he's someone you got to start. And or if all those other guys stay out.
Yeah. So
if he's
obviously
not
this applies-
activated, Duke Johnson gets that role. So anyway, go ahead.
And Duke Johnson, to that effect, he catches a lot of passes. That's like kind of his niche. So he could have a very similar role to what Gaskin has had over the last 5 weeks or so. So I think if Gaskin can't go because of COVID, you pick up, if he's activated, you pick up Brown, and then if not, you pick up Duke Johnson.
Yeah, pick up Brown just in case.
Graver, who is your running back?
My guy is Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb has a great matchup this week with the Raiders, second easiest strength of schedule running back matchup. And he is back and healthy. And the Browns are missing so many players on offense and just on their team in general. Baker Mayfield, Kevin Stefanski, a bunch of receivers. Like, it's an insane disaster COVID outbreak situation, like worse than anything the Titans had, but yet nobody wants to cancel the Browns season or call them reckless or who cares, whatever. It's not a big deal. But the point is, Nick Chubb, unless he gets put on the COVID list at some point this week, which I guess could happen at any time, it's RB1 dominance for Nick Chubb this week. They're going to have to just feed him because what other options do they have?
Yeah, I mean, he's been running back 44 like the last 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, he's been pretty bad as far as, I guess the Browns have been pretty bad over the offense over these last few weeks. So yeah, I mean, I guess I could see it. The only concern is that what if he gets COVID next, and then you're kind of screwed. But again, this is why you should be maybe eyeing a guy like Dearness Johnson, just because if Chubb goes down, you have the running back one who can actually be a running back one for the Cleveland Browns. So just keep an eye on that. Greenlaw, your thoughts on Chubb?
He seems like an automatic start. I don't know why this is a guy that's not obvious. I mean, maybe it's a cop-out from JG, but I think he's for sure an obvious start. I mean, it's Nick Chubb. And as
he's an obvious start, but is he an obvious top 12 running back, even with the whole entire offensive line being out?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just got to think about what Case Keenum said today. And what he said was that when you have a full Chubb in the backfield, you're going to feel comfortable. And that's just kind of what you got to ride with here.
I like it. The old full Chubb. Okay, so we're going to move on to wide receiver, and I'm going to go with a wide receiver that's on a team that doesn't really pass a lot, and they kind of make me flaccid, the opposite of a full Chubb, and that is the Tennessee Titans. And I think you got to go. I don't know what it is about Julio Jones this week. I just feel it. About Julio Jones. I have a feeling after his comments on Sunday about feeling good, feeling 100%, no setbacks, he gets another week without A.J. Brown on the practice field to build up chemistry with Ryan Tannehill. I just think that Julio Jones is going to end up being a wide receiver 12. I'm calling it. I think he's going to get 100 yards and a touchdown this weekend. I just feel it. It's has nothing to do with any kind of fantasy stats or anything like that. It is a pure gut feeling.
I love it. I hope it happens. He was wide open on a deep shot this past game, but they couldn't pass protect well enough. So maybe that gets figured out, and he gets a couple deep passes.
Yeah.
Gives you a full Chubb.
Yeah,
Nice.
Hopefully I get a full Chubb off that. Greenlaw, who is your wide receiver?
JG's guy, little boy Mooney. He was wide receiver 6 and then wide receiver 4 before the injury to Justin Fields. But this week, he's got Justin Fields back for the second week, and they face the Vikings defense, which is the worst defense against wide receivers in the league. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for him. Take the top off the defense, which he's been really effective at. So I think this is a good get right game after being, I think he was like wide receiver 46 the first week with Andy Dalton and wide receiver 85 last week when he was with Justin Fields the first game back. So opportunity here to build up something. I think Mooney is a good play going forward. Like obviously not the rest of this year necessarily. That's not a guy you want to consistently rely on if possible. But next year going into the draft, I do think he maybe becomes a real legit fantasy player.
Yeah, I like some Darnell Mooney. I think Justin has been on that train for a while now, and he will end up being right. Darnell Mooney is going to be a top 12 wide receiver consistently going forward once they get this offense tweaked up. Graver, your thoughts on Mooney, little Mooney boy?
I'm all in on Lil Mooney boy. They got a great matchup this week. The Vikings, I don't know if you said this, Vikings allow the most points to wide receivers. So
I did, but I love the reinforcement.
Reinforce it. He had, he had 5 targets last week, and he could have had a bigger game. But you know what? I think Justin Fields will have a nice game on this one against the Vikings' bad defense, and Mooney will be the recipient of that.
Yeah, I'd be a little weary of grabbing the Minnesota Vikings defense. I don't know why this week. I feel like that's going to be a little bit different, but I think that the Bears could really put up some points against the Vikings.
Agree.
The tight end position, we all hate mandatory tight end. Nobody here likes mandatory tight end, but we figure we'd talk about it anyway. And I'm going with Dallas Cowboys tight end Dalton Schultz. And it's really easy. Listen, it's really easy to be a top 12 tight end. And he's going up against the Giants team, which in his last 2 games against the Giants, he's gone for 70 yards and 79 yards. And that's probably enough to be a top 12 tight end in the NFL. I think he'll find the end zone this week. He's had a few quiet weeks. I think they'll get him involved against this New York Giants defense. And I think that if you need a tight end and you don't have one of the big ones, Dalton Schultz is the guy that you need to be streaming. Graver, your thoughts?
I like Dalton Schultz quite a bit as well. I think I'm weary because I got Dak Prescott in a few leagues, and he's been kind of off the last few weeks, and I need him to step up this week for the fantasy playoffs. And I think that one way he can do that is to find old reliable Dalton Schultz check downs and safe plays over the middle, and so I'm with you on this one.
Greenlaw, any thoughts?
I think he's been solid most of this year. There's been a couple weeks where he's been a little down, but I mean, honestly, he was a guy you could have picked up probably off the waiver wires to begin the season, and you would have had better production than a lot of tight ends over the course of the year that you drafted. So yeah. I think this is a solid choice.
Yeah. All right, Graver, who is your tight end to watch out for this week?
All right, I got 2 guys that play for the same team, and it's all based on if one of them plays or not. So my first guy is Harrison Bryant of the Cleveland Browns. And one of the reasons for this is that Austin Hooper, David Njoku, and the other backup guy, Steven Carlson, all placed on the reserve COVID list. The Raiders, Cleveland's matchup on Saturday, allow the most points of any team to tight ends. And Case Keenum is a starting quarterback, a guy who doesn't really look down the field for deep shots to wide receivers that much, but, likes to safe plays over the middle, kind of looking for tight end type of action. So if Harrison Bryant, who's dealing with an ankle injury, who was limited in Tuesday's walkthrough, whatever, if he can't play because of his ankle injury, then pivot to someone else. Don't start Miller Forrestall. I don't think he's the only other healthy tight end in Cleveland. Former Tennessee Titan. But I would definitely look to Harrison Bryant if you are super desperate for tight end for somebody to finish in the top 12.
What about you, Greenlaw? Who's your tight end?
My guy is Ricky Seals-Jones from the Washington football team. He was pretty solid when Logan Thomas was out earlier this year. He's been a tight end over the course of the season. He's been a tight end top 16 4 weeks, and he gets to play a horrible Philly team against the tight end. So it's the number 1 worst defense against the tight end. So I think it's a great matchup. I think last week was not great, but he was also coming off of an injury, a hip injury, where he didn't see as many snaps. I think that another week getting healthier, he's going to see more snaps, and he's going to take on that role he saw when Logan Thomas was out. And I think he's going to be a pretty solid tight end one.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of Ricky Seals-Jones being a tight end one. I just love his name, and that's really all it's about.
That's true.
That's all.
That's it. That's all it's about. Just play who you love.
Yeah, I mean, with no McLaurin there, it's who else can they throw to? It's gonna be him. I think Gibson gets a boost out of that, and
They'll probably resurrect J.D. McKissick and throw him out there.
Yeah, I just realized that McLaurin is still in concussion protocol, and it's ruined my night. It's ruined my evenings. I need Terry McLaurin to play. I mean, my God, it's the fantasy playoffs, Terry. Get in there.
It's not good.
Doesn't he not know that it's fantasy playoffs? What's wrong with these NFL players?
I got him in 2 leagues.
Always
In
think
one of
about
those leagues,
themselves.
I got the bye. Thank goodness. In the other league, I need him.
Yeah, I need him bad. Let's get to the sit-start questions. We only got a few, but it's actually a pretty short episode, considering that we all talked about 3 players each, 12 players.
Actually, I didn't talk about a wide receiver, but that's perfectly fine.
Oh, did you not?
I did not.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. Who did I say?
Do you want to talk about wide receiver? I wasn't paying attention.
I could give one.
Yeah, go ahead.
My guy is Devontae Smith, who has had an up-and-down season, more bad games than good, for sure. But Washington's not good at defense, and they aren't good against wide receivers at all. And in a divisional matchup, I think this could be a high-scoring divisional game, more so than people might expect. And Devontae Smith, beneficiary. There you go. Unexpected wide receiver one.
Great analysis. Okay, so let's go to the questions. What's our first question?
Right.
I think we only got 2. Should Michael Carter be off IR? If not, who should I start? McNichols, Craig Reynolds, Rex Burkhead, or Matt Breida? I don't know. Michael Carter is eligible to come off IR, but I don't think at this point that he is. If I had to start one, I think I would start McNichols.
What an unbelievable group of running backs here. I would actually start Craig Reynolds. They talked about how much they loved him in Detroit after the last game. And if Williams and Swift end up being out another week, I think he's the guy. McNichols, we saw that it's really Foreman's backfield with a little bit of McNichols and Hilliard in there. Burkhead, I'm still not trusting them. And like you've talked about earlier, Jags defense is actually pretty solid. Breida, they just don't run the ball, and you don't know which guy's going to get it. So I legitimately think Craig Reynolds is the best out of this 4, and that is with, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, like 2 confidence.
I just heard of Craig Reynolds 5 minutes before we went on air. Did not even know he existed.
Like, pray that Michael Carter gets activated.
Yeah, I think that's what you got to do. Maybe fly up to New York and help him out.
Or see if Dearness Johnson is on waivers and hope Nick Chubb gets COVID this week.
Yeah. I mean, you got a lot of forgiveness to ask whatever God you pray to get Michael Carter off IR, because good Lord, look at this list. I almost think it's a joke.
They'll never know if Nick Chubb gets COVID because he had it less than 90 days ago, so he doesn't get tested.
Interesting. Good note. Good nugget.
Is it time to sit Travis Kelce? I am always going to lean on this as a no, because you always play your studs. And regardless of what he's been these last few weeks, that is obviously going to change eventually. I know we're running out of time with the playoffs, upon us, but you don't want to be the guy that set Kelce during the playoffs.
Here's what I'll say about this. I agree with everything you just said. And I'll add that Kelce is playing tomorrow night, Thursday Night Football. This is a crazy week with COVID outbreaks. At any point in time, whatever tight end you're thinking of starting that isn't Kelce could suddenly get COVID. And then Kelce's on your bench, locked in place with whatever he gets on Thursday night, which could be good. And you won't be able to start him or even drop him to pick up somebody else who doesn't have COVID. So I would just start him because I mean, A, he's Travis Kelce. He's still tight end 2 right now. And B, like, you don't want your other guy to get COVID. That would be the worst way to lose.
Yeah, last 2 weeks have stunk, tight end 23 and 24, but 8 of the 12 weeks this season that he's played, he's been a tight end 8 or better. Most of those weeks he's tight end 4 or better. So this is not a guy you're sitting unless you have George Kittle sitting behind him. That's the only guy I would start over.
When he played the Chargers earlier this year, he went 7 for 11 and 104 yards. You got to start Travis Kelce. You just have to, and it sucks. I understand what you're going through. 27 yards to 27 yards, like Greenlaw said, but you got to start. You just got to.
Yep.
Should I pick up Hurts, Jackson, Mahomes, or stick with Hill? I think you could still stick with Hill. I think at this point,
What is this question?
This is a
I
league
don't
I'm
know
in
how.
with Daniel Gooden. I'm actually
Pick
in this
up?
league with him. And let me
Pick
set
up?
it up. So it
Pick
is a
up?
four team league, and you have 0 bench spots. And there's, I think, 1 quarterback, 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 3 flex spots, and a kicker and a defense. You have to drop the lowest scoring player on your team every week. Doesn't matter who it is. And you have to drop anyone that's on a bye week. So that is why these players are available. That's why Jalen Hurts is available, is because he was on a bye last week. Mahomes is available because he hasn't been amazing every single week this year. But that is why he's asking this question. I'm not going to give you advice.
What
Daniel,
a wild league.
You're in my league, and I'm not going to let you know.
Pick up Lamar Jackson and play him.
He's hurt.
I'm trying to help Greenlaw, Graver.
I appreciate it.
Oh. Okay, I'll give a real answer, though. I would play Mahomes tomorrow night.
I think I would stick with Taysom Hill. That's just, I think it's down to Taysom Hill or Patrick Mahomes. But I'll say this, Jalen Hurts is one of the best fantasy quarterbacks ever, and he's going up against Washington this week. I think I would almost rank him. I think I'm going to rank him, and Washington's got a lot of COVID going on. I think they have tons of players on COVID. So you know what? I'm just changing it up. I'm going Hurts number 1, Taysom Hill number 2, Patrick Mahomes number 3, and Lamar Jackson isn't even worth talking about because he's a horrible quarterback.
I'm going Mahomes number 1, Taysom number 2, Hurts number 3. But I think all 3 are solid options. They could all be QB1 this week.
I'm glad we were able to clarify that for you. Jamar Chase,
couple that real quick with his running backs that he was talking about in his other league, the running backs that literally no one would ever want. And then in this, he's got the 3 of the best quarterbacks in the league on the waivers.
Jamar Chase, Christian Kirk, KJ Osborne start to who do I do? Jamar Chase, Christian Kirk at this point, in my opinion. Jamar Chase, you got to stick with him. Yeah. He can go off at any
Christian
point.
Kirk?
No, DeAndre
Thielen
Hopkins.
Out again? Is Thielen out, though?
They don't know yet. He's not been officially ruled out, which, knowing my luck, because I have him and Terry McLaurin, they're probably both going to be out.
If Thielen is out, then I would start – Chase is the no-brainer here, but I think you would start Osborne if Thielen is out. If Thielen's back in, then I think Kirk's the pick.
I'll say this. Justin is a known Christian Kirk hater, but with no DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk has found, even with DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk has carved out a nice role for himself, and I think that continues without DeAndre Hopkins.
Okay.
And we have, do I flex KJ Osborne or Zeke Elliott? Probably Zeke with Tony Pollard being injured.
Zeke said he felt the most explosive he's felt all season in practice today.
Oh, wow. So I would start KJ Osborne then because Zeke's a liar.
Zeke's back. I can't wait for it. I have him on my league of record team that is going to – I'm happy to hear Zeke is in the best shape of his life in week 15. So obviously you're playing Zeke here. Also, just like the quantity of touches, Zeke's probably the guy anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is all the questions for today. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Then go buy our merchandise over at shop.broadwaysportsmedia.com and use promo code FLEX15 to get 15% off. Thanks for listening all season long. Just in case this is our last episode. Oh, we got a question about Viking coming in. Should I start Josh Allen's, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, or Tua? I too am a member of the Super Team League. So this guy's in your league as well, Greenlaw?
This is my brother. So yes, he is in this Super Team League with Daniel Gooden and I. Again, I'm not going to help you with this.
Is there a third? Because there's 4 teams, right, in this league?
There's 4 teams, correct.
Will the other guy be asking us a fantasy question in the middle
No,
of my
I think the other guy lives in Amish country, so I'm not even sure how he's in the league.
Well, I'm going with Jalen Hurts again. I think Jalen Hurts is the choice out of these 4. I know that Graver already said Patrick Mahomes, but you may be fighting Daniel for Patrick Mahomes at this point.
Who do the Bills play?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
The Panthers. Oh. The Bills need a win more than almost any team in football right now, and they're playing the Panthers.
Which is a good defense.
No, they're not a good defense.
Yeah, they are.
They are allowing... Oh, okay. They're pretty good. I would not start Josh Allen. I would start Patrick Mahomes. But if the other guy, if Daniel Gooden picks up Patrick Mahomes, then go with Jalen Hurts.
All right.
And if they either one of them drops Taysom Hill, pick up Taysom Hill.
Yeah. Some guy asked if we could look at his team and tell
Yeah,
him.
we'll do that.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Okay, so back to
I
the
would
outro.
I would love Daniel to drop Taysom Hill, by the way. So yeah, Daniel, pick up either Hurts or Jackson or Mahomes. I don't care which one of them. Please drop one of them. Or please pick up one of them and drop Hill.
Thanks for listening on behalf of Robert Greenlaw.
Wait, are we going to go away or are we going to look at this guy's roster?
How are we going to see it?
Just type your players out and we'll comment on it.
So what are we supposed to do while he's typing all these characters and words and
We
stuff?
can still talk about the 15% off at shop.broadwaysportsmedia.com.
Oops,
There's
sorry,
that shirt.
Greenlaw.
Waiting on you, JD, to send us your roster. Look at that shirt.
An amazing
Blue.
shirt.
Oh, look at that one. That's a shirt. Oh, there's a sweatshirt. That's white. And then here's a t-shirt. This is really good for our podcast audience, by the way, us doing this.
It's amazing for the viewing audience, though. Look, they're getting all of these great shirts. Coach's Corner, one of the shows on Broadway Sports Media.
Tennessee Tickle Monsters, they're back.
They're coming back, Bud Dupree.
Yeah. All good. Okay, well, I'm not waiting on old JD here. So JD, just email it to us at Robert.
Don't email it. Put it on Twitter. Comment on Twitter.
BroadwaySportsMedia.com.
Tag the Flex on Twitter or Broadway Sports Media.
Or any of us.
Thanks for listening and watching. On behalf of Robert Greenlaw, Justin Graver, Broadway Sports, my name is Zach Lyons, and we just flexed